Yo, monkeys, it's me, DDP. And you, monkey, well, you're watching Wrestling with Regret.
For many in professional wrestling, there is no greater goal or accolade than to be the WWE Champion. With more than 50 years of history behind it, it's the biggest prize in the largest wrestling company in the world. Some of the best grapplers in the business have won or at least fought for the championship in some of the greatest matches of all time. No matter what look the actual belt's taken on over the decades, for many it remains a symbol of excellence in pro wrestling, the pinnacle of which all wrestlers should aspire to. Many of the greatest champs in history have held the gold more than once, but not everyone's been so lucky to receive multiple runs with it. Of the 51 men who've held the championship, only 23 of them have held it for a single time. 26 if you count Antonio Inoki, Greg Valentine, and Ted DiBiase, which WWE has chosen not to. With nearly 24 one-timers in history, it's time to whittle down that list and see who among them made the best first and only impressions. This week, I'm going to rank them, the top 8 best one-time WWE champions. Number 8. Kofi Kingston. Okay, so I was at odds with myself for a while on this one because the time I'm recording this video, Kofi is still the champion. It's not quite fair to compare his ongoing reign with those that have already been over and done with. But looking at the other possible contenders for this list, no matter how it all shakes out in the end, Kofi's run still shines above many of them. It's hard to tell the story of Kofi Kingston's ascent to the top without parodying the dialogue the company's been delivering since this year's WrestleMania, though it perfectly captures what's been going on. Despite dutifully serving in WWE's mid-card for the last 11 years, the last several of which as part of the mega-popular New Day, Kingston never got a fair shake at the top prize in the company. He wasn't even considered a top contender until this past February, when an injury to Ali freed up a spot in the Elimination Chamber match for Daniel Bryan's WWE Championship. A pair of valiant efforts by Kofi, both in the gauntlet match to earn that vacant spot and the title match itself, made him a legit contender overnight. In storyline, Kofi's chase for the championship was eerily similar to that of the man he was fighting from 5 years earlier. Held down due to his size and appearance, targeted by the McMahons for no real reason besides pettiness, with an army of fans having his back. And much like what happened to Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, Kingston made good on his word, beating Daniel for the eco-friendly title at MetLife Stadium in a hell of a match that had the fans explode with excitement at the end. Apart from the joyous title victory, what's made Kofi's run so good is how well he's been booked. Unlike other babyface champs in recent history, Kofi's had one of the strongest runs while holding the belt, at one point going months without losing a single match. Kofi's historic run as champion is a refreshing change of pace in a company with a largely stagnant product, and the ultimate validation for one of WWE's most consistently entertaining performers. Number 7. The Iron Sheik. The term transitional champion often comes with a lot of baggage. By definition, these particular champs aren't given the belt because they're the chosen one, but rather because they want to move the belt from one person to another without having either of those guys fight. The 9th champion in history, the Iron Sheik is a prime example of such a practice, but it's his place in history that makes him quite possibly the most important transitional champion. On the day after Christmas of 1983, the Iron Sheik beat Bob Backlund for the championship at Madison Square Garden, after Bob's manager Arnold Skaaland threw in the towel on his client's behalf. Sheiky Baby's win snapped the All-Americans' near 6-year run with the title, which in and of itself is an impressive accomplishment. But the title change was done purely out of convenience, an easy way for fans to buy into the next challenger. Fresh off his meteoric rise in the American Wrestling Association, Hulk Hogan returned to the World Wrestling Federation just days after the Sheik's victory, and less than 3 weeks later, he'd beat the champion for the big green belt in the Garden, kicking off a 4-year reign that would help guide the Federation into the mainstream. Legend has it, it was initially pitched to Backlund that he turned heel before dropping the title to Hogan, but Bob refused, leading to the Sheik's involvement. The brief title reign helped elevate the Iron Sheik's role as a dastardly foreign heel for years to come, and provided the catapult that would launch Hulkamania into the stratosphere, the gateway from one era to the next. Number 6. Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero's title victory at No Way Out 2004 is the culmination of a story so satisfying that no Hollywood screenwriter could cook it up. A man once on the brink of death in WCW, who fought with an addiction that cost him his job, Eddie got clean and came back with a vengeance as a performer. As his personality finally got to shine, Guerrero became beloved by the fans and a true underdog hero, setting things up for a David vs. Goliath encounter against Brock Lesnar. At the Cow Palace in San Francisco, okay, technically Daly City, Eddie managed to slay the beast years before Seth Rollins made it cool, winning his first and only world title in one of the biggest ovations you'll ever see. It was such a joyous occasion, people have completely looked past the fact that it wasn't even a clean win. After claiming the gold, Eddie would go on to have a brief yet intense rivalry with Kurt Angle, resulting in one of the best matches in WrestleMania history at Madison Square Garden. After WrestleMania 20, Guerrero dove headfirst into a war with new challenger John Bradshaw Layfield. These two would bleed buckets in a series of matches that spring, ending with JBL winning the championship, ironically due to a little bit of cheating and stealing. Though Eddie's title reign was fleeting, it still goes down as one of the most gratifying in recent history, giving us classic matches with a variety of opponents. Eddie was such a good champion, it made it that much easier for us to hate the next guy. Number 5. JBL. One of the most controversial characters and champions of the time, John Bradshaw Layfield's one and only reign began at the 2004 Great American Bash after beating the previous entry in this countdown in a Texas bull rope match. The title victory came soon after a complete gimmick overhaul. After Farouk's retirement from wrestling, the brash bar-brawling Texan suddenly became a refined Wall Street magnate, blending J.R. Ewing and Gordon Gekko with a dash of Ronald Reagan. Stoking the fires of racial tension in America, his crimson-soaked feud with Eddie Guerrero was a battle of ideals, with the Cowboy coming out on top. As champion, JBL was the perfect evil heel as he had incredible flexibility with his character. Not only could he be vicious in the ring and on the microphone, but at times he was also very self-deprecating and comical, finding himself in ridiculous situations that included wearing a neck halo with his cowboy hat on top, picking a fight with an inflatable Godzilla after being hit with a tranquilizer dart, calling himself a wrestling god, and fighting Kurt Angle over who cornered the market on over-the-top championship celebrations. But despite all that, the goofy stuff never overshadowed his heelish antics. It's something the company's other top champ at the time could have afforded to do now and then. Along with Guerrero, Layfield defended his title against The Undertaker, The Big Show, Booker T, and Angle, often winning as a result of dumb luck that would enrage the fans. Jibbles eventually earned his comeuppance at the hands of John Cena at WrestleMania 21, his months on top paving the way for the Doctor of Thugonomics to earn a cathartic victory. His methods may have been questionable, his antics hateable, but as the longest reigning heel champion of the modern era, Bradshaw's lone WWE title run was a booking experiment done to perfection. Number 4. Pedro Morales. At just over 1,020 days on top, Pedro Morales' run with the championship is the single longest for anyone who only held the title on one occasion. The pride of Puerto Rico, Morales beat Ivan Koloff in February of 1971 and held off a variety of challengers, including Freddie Blassie, Blackjack Mulligan, and Ivan Putski. His most famous match as champ took place at Shea Stadium in 1972, when he fought his friend and rival Bruno Sammartino to a curfew draw after wrestling for 75 minutes, a battle that was dubbed the Match of the Century. Along with his various singles feuds, Morales would also fight in several tag team bouts with a variety of partners. Despite being well received in his home territories of New York and Boston, his drawing power stumbled in areas that didn't have a large Puerto Rican population, like Philadelphia and Baltimore, and by the end of his run, fans were clamoring for Bruno to be back on top. Ultimately, Morales would drop the title to Stan Stasiak, another one-timer, who'd only hold the gold for 9 days before Sammartino took it back for another 3 or so years. Number 3. The Ultimate Warrior. WrestleMania 6 is perhaps best known for its iconic main event that saw the Ultimate Warrior become the supposed successor to Hulk Hogan in the World Wrestling Federation. Dubbed the Ultimate Challenge, Warrior, then the Intercontinental Champ, put his yellow belt on the line against Hogan in his WWF Championship. After a match with superb storytelling that was inversely proportional to the average caliber of the men involved, Warrior bested the Hulkster to become a double champion, making him the first man to hold both titles at the same time. Warrior defeated men such as Mr. Perfect, Haku, and Ted DiBiase to retain his title as he carried the Federation into the 90s. His greatest feud while champion had to be his renewed rivalry with Rick Rude, a revival of their original battle over the IC title 1 year prior. At SummerSlam 1990, the two waged war in a steel cage match, a rarity for the world title, that saw Warrior emerge the victor. The Ultimate Warrior's time on top of the mountain ended in controversy after the 1991 Royal Rumble, when Macho King Randy Savage cost him the title against Sergeant Slaughter, an act that would lead to their encounter at Mania 7. Though Warrior was never able to regain the title, his time as champion was one of the bright spots of the Federation's first golden era, a brief respite from the dominance of Hulkamania during this time period. Number 2. Superstar Billy Graham. A talent unlike any other in his prime, Superstar Billy Graham revolutionized what it meant to be a bombastic heel in professional wrestling. The Superstar had one of the best physiques in the industry, paired with a trademark gift of gab that few others at the time possessed. On April 30th, 1977, Graham beat Bruno Sammartino for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Championship and would hold the belt for 9.5 months, making him the longest reigning heel champion in company history. And no, CM Punk does not count because he only turned heel in the last couple of months of his big reign. Graham traveled all over the globe as champion, holding back several contenders to his title, including Bruno, Jack Briscoe, Dusty Rhodes, Pedro Morales, and Don Morocco. He even wrestled NWA World's Champion Harley Race in a unification match that went to a time-limit draw. One of Billy's most impressive stats is that he sold out all but one Madison Square Garden event while he was the champion, 19 times in all. In February of 1978, Graham lost the belt to Bob Backlund, an outcome that had been agreed upon the day the Superstar had won the championship the previous year, right down to the date. Though one might argue that a personality as large as Graham's never needed the world title to leave his mark on the wrestling business, that lengthy reign cemented his status as an all-time legend. Before I reveal the number 1 one-timer, here are a few honorable mentions. Buddy Rogers. The original Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers was awarded the first ever WWF Championship on April 11, 1963, the end result of a political battle between Vince McMahon Sr. and the National Wrestling Alliance. A former NWA World's Champion in his own right before Capital Sports' defection, Buddy's historic inaugural reign was unexpectedly cut short after he suffered a mild heart attack. No longer able to wrestle at his usual pace, the decision was soon made for him to drop the belt to a young Bruno Sammartino in a match that lasted less than a minute. Bruno would go on to hold the championship for 8 years straight. Diesel. When it comes to champs in the modern era, putting Diesel on this countdown is an obvious choice. After whomping Bob Backlund for the belt in 8 seconds in November of 1994, Big Daddy Cool held the title for nearly a full year before losing it to Bret Hart at Survivor Series 1995. But a year of Diesel on top didn't do much to help move the needle when it came to the bottom line. Kevin Nash had the unfortunate distinction of being a long-term champion during one of the worst periods in Federation history. As house show gates were at their lowest, they often lost to WCW in the ratings war, and the company was hemorrhaging money. Nash absolutely deserves credit for running the ship when hope was in short supply, but as champion, the fans didn't seem to be buying what the WWF was selling. Kane. As someone who spent the first several months of his fandom as a massive Canaanite, this entry is purely for my personal benefit. At King of the Ring 1998, the Big Red Machine became the first to dethrone Steve Austin as champion after winning a first blood match, albeit due to outside interference. Though to be fair, there was no way they were going to have Kane win, as the stipulation said he would set himself on fire and breathe his last breath if he lost. Sadly, Kane's one and only reign with the Big Eagle lasted exactly 1 day, as he dropped it back to Stone Cold in the rematch on Raw the night after the pay-per-view. He would go on to win the ECW and World titles in later years, but it never felt quite as good as the first time. And the number 1 one-time WWE champion is...
Oh, a little bit of the bubbly.
From his Federation debut in 1999 until the end of 2001, the overall consensus was that Chris Jericho was world champion material. But aside from a dusty finish in 2000 and a paper title reign as WCW champion during the Invasion storyline, Y2J didn't get a whole lot of chance to shine at the top. That would all change at Vengeance on December 9th, 2001. With the Alliance in ruins, the plan was to unify the WWF and World Championships in a 3-match tournament. Earlier in the night, Jericho beat his rival The Rock to claim his second WCW-ish title. Then in the main event, the Fozzy frontman pulled off the impossible, besting Stone Cold Steve Austin to unify the 2 titles, the first man to ever do so. Not only is Jericho the only person who can say he beat The Rock and Austin in the same night, he also beat them again in separate defenses at the Royal Rumble and No Way Out. Finally, the champ would main event WrestleMania 18 in a losing effort to Triple H, who was making his triumphant comeback after tearing his quad muscle the previous year. The Mania storyline itself was disappointing, and it relegated Jericho to being the third wheel in the clearly more interesting feud between Hunter and Stephanie McMahon. But the fact he made it that far at all is a testament to his ability as a performer. The title reign solidified his status as a main event level player for years to come, all the way up to the present day. For making history in more ways than one at Vengeance, for achieving a goal many fans had once thought impossible, and for ending a disheartening 2001 on a high note, Chris Jericho is my pick for the best one-time WWE Champion of all time. Who do you think belongs on the list? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.